What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, now that we're into 2023, there's a lot of expectation out there that Nintendo will talk about what's after the Switch probably by the end of this year. But it appears Nintendo could have other plans in mind, and I'll admit, if they're able to pull this off, it's something we've never seen in gaming before, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Xbox and some new reports that have come out around 343, going over the state of the studio as well as a new direction for Halo. And we'll also be talking about a very rare retro find. This one involves 50 Cent and the original Xbox. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. We're gonna start today with Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. This, of course, is a game from Rocksteady that is gonna be coming out in a few months now. We're getting closer and closer to its release. But if you remember, there was a screenshot that leaked out online, and we talked about how it showcased some live service elements, specifically a battle pass, and that kind of deflated a lot of people's hype online. Well, as we can see over on Twitter, this was the original image that appears to have been pulled down. At least that's what's being talked about now from Rebs Gaming. And from what I could see, yeah, it looked like the media was unavailable as there was a copyright claim on it. And this was quote tweeted by a bunch of different people who had covered it before that with the same results. So from what I can tell, it appears that WB did go around and start pulling down any evidence of this screenshot that was out there within reason. They can't go to websites necessarily and have them be ripped down there, but social media sites like Twitter where you can put in a copyright claim, yeah, it appears they are doing that, and that basically just says, yes, this is correct. This leak is legitimate, and there are going to be live service elements in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. But we still have to wait for Rocksteady to go over the gameplay, the setup, everything in full. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because it's Rocksteady and they've done such a good job before, but I guess we'll see. Also, from time to time, we've talked about NFTs in games, as we've seen Ubisoft and others really take a shot at it. Now Square Enix is doubling down going into the new year. Well, at GDC, the Game Developers Conference, many people were polled in a questionnaire as to their interest in NFTs and if they'd want to have them in their games at their studio. Well, we can see this posted up over on The Verge, where they say of the 2,300 respondents, 75% of them marked not interested when asked if their studio was interested in blockchain technology, and that's actually down in terms of interest. So at 25% were interested, that's down from 27% last year said they were, and that could just be a decline from different people attending, or also the market conditions around crypto, where people are like, hey, you know what, it's not really worth it at this time. But who knows, maybe if crypto's booming in a couple of years, we'll see that tick back up to like 28, 29, 30% or something there. But at least for now, it appears that, yeah, game developers are still hesitant necessarily to go all in on NFTs, and it's probably a good thing right now. Oh, and we did talk about Ubisoft and all of the issues they're going through, which involves several canceled titles. But over on Insider Gaming, they went down a list of games that we can expect from Ubisoft to release in the next year or so. And part of that list, as you can see here, is actually for The Crew. Well, The Crew 3, I guess it would be Project Orland. It's unknown platforms, not officially announced at this time. Started as The Crew 2 DLC, but it did quickly turn into a standalone title. So I guess we can expect The Crew 3 to be announced here in the coming months. You feel like if it's coming out this year, they'd want to announce it probably before E3 and then talk about it a bit more there, as Ubisoft will do big marketing pushes that involves them dropping trailers all over the place, doing live shows, maybe like an E3 event, and then releasing. I'm thinking this fall, so like an August or September release. But if you're a big fan of The Crew or The Crew 2, looks like you'll have more of that to look forward to this year. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and their plans going into their new fiscal year. This will start in April. And originally it seemed like, okay, the forecast is dropping as they were talking about supply concerns, and we're getting into the 7th year for the Switch. That will again begin in March, as the system came out at the beginning of March 2017. So you figure, wow, that's later on in the life. Typically, we see an eventual spike, and then it slowly declines down as, well, everyone kind of has the system. But Nintendo appears to be going in a different direction for their next fiscal year expectations. In fact, they're expecting to sell more Switch systems, and it's something I've never seen in games ever with a console. At this time, we're hearing about how sales are tapering off completely, and okay, what's coming after the system to once again spike up sales with the brand new generation launching. This was reported at Bloomberg by Takashi Machizuki, in which he talks about this, saying Nintendo has told suppliers and assembly partners it intends to turn out more Switch units in the fiscal year starting April, but has not yet communicated a precise target. The people said it may revise down its plans later in the year if demand underwhelms. So the Kyoto-based company had lowered its sales forecast for the console to 19 million units in November because of the component shortages, but is now convinced it can make more and demand remains strong. Said the people asking not to be named because the discussions aren't public. The move to increase output is an unexpected measure at a late stage in the console's life cycle. So they're thinking 19 million to finish up the current fiscal year. Again, that will end March 31st. So going into April, could they go up to 20 or 21 million? We know that they have at least a big title with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Don't really know what else is after that necessarily, but we have an idea of things like Metroid Prime 4 maybe, and let's face it, there'll probably be some sort of Mario game to be within proximity of the movie coming out. It only makes sense, and I feel like it probably would be a 2D Mario, as has been rumored. I could definitely see that happening, or who knows, maybe they have a 2D Mario, and then they also have a 3D Mario. Now, Odyssey 2, as that's also been getting out there in different rumors, or maybe they're preparing the next big Mario Kart release, that happening maybe in the first quarter of 2024. But I think Nintendo will have a lot of stuff to release as they work to close out this generation, and yeah, you could see a spike in sales after them going through, as they have described, a supply shortage to where they can get systems out on store shelves significantly easier. The question really comes down to, will the demand be there for those Switch systems? I figure, hey, if they have the software that's compelling enough and the fact that really households just have multiple Switch systems, and maybe people were holding off to get that OLED device that's the special edition Zelda console or something. Yeah, you could see more and more Switch systems pile up in the same household, and all of a sudden Nintendo is creeping up on that PS2 and DS number. In fact, if Nintendo is able to accomplish this, which will impress me if they can, in the next fiscal year that would run till the first quarter of 2024, they would be right at 150 million units, which tells me that even if there was the next Switch coming out in 2024, even midway or holiday, yeah, the Switch, even if it had to slowly just squeak by the finish line, I think it would become the best-selling console ever made. Also, it makes sense that Bloomberg would start getting wind of this now, as we are expecting Nintendo to talk more about their financials in the first week of February, when they'll post all of that information. So we'll see how their holiday went and all of this, but definitely be keeping an eye on that, because we could be in some uncharted territory here with the Switch going into its 7th year, looking to raise expectations for sales. It's wild stuff right now with this system, and it feels like it's never going to end. Next up, let's talk about a bit of a wild turn here for 343 and Halo, as there was a report that got out online detailing a bit more about what was going on at 343 in the wake of the mass layoffs that were going on at Microsoft, as 343 was kind of put on the spotlight as it seemed to be a place in their gaming division that got hit very, very hard with the different layoffs. We saw people on Twitter who are ex-Halo developers at 343 who are working in places like Respawn call out all kinds of things that had happened in development of Halo Infinite, from mismanagement to the contractor situation that Microsoft does, all these different things. But now, this report here, and we can see this was posted up by Bathrobe Spartan. Okay, don't let the name fool you. They've been pretty reliable in the past, if people have kind of checked into them a bit more. But some of the stuff they're outlining here is, it can either be good or bad depending on how you wanted things to progress now with 343. So first off, 343 seems to have lost about a third of its workforce. That's internal and contractors. But 2023 won't really change or won't be affected much, as they're just focusing on the multiplayer, and a lot of the layoffs seem to happen on the single player, the narrative driven experience, the campaign side, and that was kind of capped off as Joseph Staten had left and gone back to Xbox Publishing, as a lot of people were assuming his role was complete, because it doesn't seem like their big focus is going to be on 343 working with the single player and campaign side, more than working on the multiplayer side. Once again, makes sense with Pierre Heinz kind of steering the ship now. But here's the interesting thing about 343 currently, as they say that Halo Infinite largely missed its financial and overall goals, which, once again, not hard to believe that. It's led to Microsoft's decision to halt 343 active development. So 343, while they will still work to support and hold up the multiplayer, and I'm sure do all the cosmetics, battle pass, all that, they're not necessarily going to be the main developers behind Halo Infinite necessarily, and what they would be turning into would be a franchise coordinator, essentially. So think about, I guess, a studio that keeps track of all the lore and everything, and then takes Halo and just kind of license it out to other studios who would be working on games fully. So think about Certain Affinity, who's apparently working on, I think, the Battle Royale, but it could also lean into some of the story elements. And then there's others like Spearsoft. But at this time, 343 would take a bit of a step back. They would still hold up the Slipspace engine. In fact, it might not be a bad thing then, because 343 can also just kind of work to build out the Slipspace engine completely. But what this would mean is technically Halo as we know it, with the Master Chief's current journey, kind of coming to an end, unless a studio wants to come in and pick up where they let off with Zeta Halo and that open world Halo experience. People may have, some of the other studios may have other things in mind that they want to do. They might not even want to make a game around Master Chief, maybe around other Spartans or different events that took place in the lore. And I actually don't mind that as much, because I think a lot of people have been asking, hey, 343, they've taken a pretty good shot at Halo multiple times now. It just hasn't worked out. What can other studios do? And I mean, that might be what we're seeing here. And I feel like Certain Affinity is going to be the first one up, and we could even see what they're working on this year, as by June or so, we're expecting them to have been 3 years into development with about 100 different developers. So if it is a battle royale that isn't necessarily trend chasing and trying to be Warzone, for example, but just a Halo spin on it, that could be kind of cool. So we'll see what happens here, but as of now, this is something that I think you'll see other reputable sources like Jason Schreier look into, as he was talking quite a bit about 343. So we'll see if he's able to pull more information from that entire situation. But shoot, with Halo now, it's not in a great place. So here's hoping 10 years from now we can look back on this as being a big turning point for the franchise, but we'll see. Next up, let's talk about a rare find in the retro community that kind of reminded me a bit of the Nintendo PlayStation. Maybe not on that level in terms of historical value, but certainly on the level of, hey, I had this thing in my attic. No one believed that I had it, so I pulled it down and took pictures of it. Here it is. And well, you can see this posted up over on Reddit. This is on the original Xbox subreddit. 50 Cent Pure White Edition 2. I found this in my storage, which I had as a kid. I made a post before, but it was shut down, so I added photos of my own. I have no idea how much this is worth. Any ideas? So obviously it was going to get shot down because people were like, yeah, right, you don't have that. There's maybe 4, I think there's actually 3 limited edition 50 Cent systems. In fact, I had to go look. If you look on consolemods.org, they have outlined all the different special edition systems down to some of the rarest ones, right? And this would be the Edition 2. Said one was given away in Australia and one in New Zealand. Okay, so there's 2 of them there. Has the 50 Cent bulletproof written in gold on top. In the bottom left, black swirl designs on it and 50 Cent's signature. Okay, there were 4 of these made. So they have 1 of 4, and they're asking how much it's worth. I have no idea, but it's probably a lot of money. The fact that you have one and there's only 4 of them out there total, the others could just be just completely missing or thrown out or anything there. And in fact, this one being in pristine condition, it is impressive to see. And it's one of those stories of, oh yeah, it was just in my storage, so I'll go post it up online. And everyone's like, you have a holy grail here. So we'll see how this progresses. Similar to the Nintendo PlayStation that had a more historical value behind it, but it still sold at auction, so we at least had hundreds of thousands of dollars of value placed on it. I'll be curious to see what happens here. Do they take it to auction, or do they just hold on to it and realize they have one of the rarest Xboxes on Earth? And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PlayStation VR 2. It's out next month, and I'm getting excited for it because it looks like a very capable headset, and we do have some experiences with Horizon Call of the Mountain and Gran Turismo 7 that I'm looking forward to, and I'll probably be playing right away, but I'll admit the launch lineup, not necessarily the most compelling thing, and this is certainly an area that Sony will have to build on over the next year or two to kind of build that library up. But they did go over some more titles that'll be there at launch, and they have a nice chart here just to kind of showcase everything, and we'll talk about some of the new announcements they had here, which was, let's see, we start with Before Your Eyes, then we have Kayak VR, so you can kind of kayak around in VR on that one. Pavlov VR, this is the #1 most popular multiplayer PC VR shooter, as they describe it. That one looked kind of cool. The shooters make sense, and I think they work well with VR, so I might check that one out too. Puzzling Places, then we have Song in the Smoke Rekindled. We have Synth Riders, that's the remastered edition. Thumper, which that's a really cool game. I could see that also being a good VR experience for people as like their first title to check out. NFL Pro Era, that looks very confusing. We'll see how that one goes. What the Bat? We have Res Infinite. That's another one I think would be cool to try out, as well as Tetris Effect Connected. Then we have Creed Rise to Glory, and the last Clockwinder. So you can kind of see what I mean when I'm saying it's nothing that jumps off the page, but I will say they clarified a bit more on Gran Turismo 7, which is something we were all curious about. After Gran Turismo Sport was more of a limited experience in PlayStation VR, Gran Turismo 7 will be the entirety of the game in VR. All the cars, everything. The only part that's left out is anything to do with split screen. So kind of makes sense there. VR, again, a very personalized or personal experience. I kind of understand why you necessarily wouldn't have split screen with someone else while you're in VR, but either way, that's the launch lineup as outlined by Sony. I think missing Half-Life Alyx, that would have been a really, really big get for their launch. And it's something that's rumored and probably could still happen, and I think will at some point, but there we have it. Horizon Call of the Mountain and certainly something like Gran Turismo probably being the two big games they're holding up to try to sell VR to. So let me know what you think about this launch lineup there down below. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asking, PSVR 2 is out next month. Are you picking one up? 6% say yes, buying it ASAP. 32% said not right away, but maybe later if the game library gets better. And then just 62%, no, I'm not interested in VR. And that's still something that the VR market really struggles with, just bringing in a ton of new people. It's been kind of a slow grind, and I feel like the Quest 2 did a pretty good job getting more people on board because it was a very simplified experience. You just needed the headset, didn't need a PC, didn't need a game console, anything like that. So I'm hoping Sony goes all out, or at least gets behind the PSVR 2 in a more meaningful way than they did with the first PlayStation VR, because they kind of just sort of forgot about it over time, whereas the PSVR 2 seems much more capable, and I'm hoping that means they'll come up with some really interesting experiences to attach to it. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Wallerin, says, Dokapon Kingdom was a great game. Came out for the PS2 and Wii, but it's rare and expensive. A re-release for Switch would be fantastic. I just hope they can make a few minor changes. I had an issue where my brother and I played the very long story mode. We stopped halfway through. When we came back to it weeks later, we couldn't remember what we were supposed to do next, and the game doesn't have any kind of summary of the current situation. Yeah, that's something that does frustrate me with JRPGs in general, when they don't have some kind of summary to catch you back up if you've been out of it for months even. I mean, at that point, you just go, I guess I should start over, but then you realize, oh, I was like 25 hours into this thing. Do I want to start all the way back over. But I did look up Dokapon Kingdom, and you're right. It's on the PS2, it's like $150 complete. On the Wii, it's $200. So definitely a much more rare title for either system, and those are the games I like to see get these kind of remakes, because clearly for a lot of people, they're just out of reach. If you want to play on original hardware, you can of course emulate it, but in this instance, adding something like online multiplayer for a game that is a Mario Party RPG just seems like it would take it to the next level. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Nintendo forecasting more Switch systems to sell in their next fiscal year? Do you think they can pull that off? And do you think they'll be on a crash course then for the PS2 and the DS? And then also, what do you think about 343 and some of the reports getting out there about the studio now becoming more of a coordination spot and having other studios work on Halo Infinite? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.